Warning: this program contains strong language, auditory violence, and mental nudity. It is intended only for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to your uncensored home for World of Warcraft news and opinions. This is Unshackled Fury.
The time has come at last, and the show may have reached its zenith as the game director of World of Warcraft himself descends upon these furious plains. So welcome to a special edition of Unshackled Fury. I'm your host, Berserker. Mr. Corden will be here in a moment. And do we have the interview of all interviews in store for you today? Because that's right. No gimmicks, no swerves, no oddball April Fool's shenanigans in November. Mr. Ian Hazzikostas himself sat down for a 30-minute interview with Jez and I just a few days ago. Now we are finally unleashing it upon the world. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to hear those words come out of my mouth on this show, but the dog finally caught the car. Is really what happened here. When 10 years ago I set out on whatever this journey was and I had a goal in mind, this was it. This was the thing. To get an interview. Yeah, listen, Metzon's like way out there, right? He's my personal Lord and Savior. That's not like a real gettable thing. But Ian Hazzikostas, that's the top of the heap. That's the wizard at the top of the cabal. That's whatever you want to call it. But this is the one that one day I hoped would happen. And unbelievably enough, it did. I promised some time ago that we were going to try to do something for the 10th anniversary. You may have noticed that we started doing video for the first time with that episode. Well, now you know why. Because this had been in the works. Obviously couldn't say anything about it until, it was basically done. I did put a little thing in our Discord about, hey, if you got some questions for somebody way up high on the food chain, maybe throw them down. Thank you to everyone that did. Only got to a few of them, but appreciate everybody's participation in that. But this was something that was in the works, and we've been kind of shaping things to meet this moment, and we did. I should certainly mention as well, if you're listening to this on the podcast, we did record it. It is on video, so if you go to the Unshackled Fury YouTube page, you'll see the interview live and uncut. I didn't edit anything out, so you'll see it exactly as it happened. One take, man. Red light goes on, and you got to take care of business. So, if you're listening to this here and you actually want to see it, go over to the Unshackled Fury YouTube page. So, credit to Jez. He had contact through his sort of media landscape, and they were able to put us on with folks over at Blizzard that, quite frankly, probably just delete my emails when I usually send them over. Or maybe not. They're busy folks. But we finally had a bit of a breakthrough there, and lo and behold, they were able to secure a time for Ian to sit down with us. And so we got a 30-minute window with him. And when I say a 30-minute window, I mean that's it. From the time the call begins to the time the call ends, you basically, that's all you're promised is 30 minutes. And when you're faced with something like that, I'll admit, it's a daunting challenge, because how in the hell do you prepare to talk to somebody who is responsible for one of the great loves of your life, and you have 30 minutes and you got to stay on task, you got to stay on time. You know, there's a lot of there's a lot of pressures in that moment to try to hit it right. And you know, again, thanks to everybody for the questions. I certainly had some of my own, and Jez had his. And I'm looking at what I did right here is I simply wrote an agenda out on a legal pad, yellow pad, and organized it by sections. I had my minute breaks. We're like, well, if we're here, then we're here. And if we're here, then we're here. And that's pretty much how I kept myself organized throughout the whole thing. And when the time came, we had our time to call in, or, you know, for them to call in to us, basically, because we're going through our recording system. So they called in to us, and I told them, hey, you could get on a few minutes early if you want. And sure enough, credit to Ian. He was actually able to get in with us a few minutes early. So we had a nice little moment of small talk while I set everything up. You know, he's genuinely as nice as he seems. He's just such a down-to-earth guy. We're very, very lucky to have him at the helm, and I'll say this in the interview and some other things, but it couldn't have been a greater experience for us, and certainly for me. He answered our questions, was open to everything, as you'll hear in a moment, and he seemed like he had a good time. So always like that too. But yeah, it was fast, it was furious, and I hope everybody enjoys what we were able to get. I had to cut 2 whole sections of questions I wanted to ask. So when you're listening to it and you go, my God, why are they talking about this? Why didn't they ask about that? Frankly, like I said, I don't know how you really can cover what you want to cover in 30 minutes. It is it goes by in a flash. However quick you think it goes by even quicker than that. So but I don't want to belabor the point. I've already talked for too long. I know people want to hear this thing. So without any further ado, I present to you Unshackled Fury's interview with the one and only Mr. Ian Hazzikostas. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Unshackled Fury podcast. If this is your first time, I'm your host, Berserker. With me is my co-pilot on this furious flight, Mr. Jez Corden. And today we are making good on the promise that we made about the 10th anniversary of this little show, that we were going to do something big, something colossal, something of great magnitude. And have we ever done it? Because I don't know if it gets much bigger than this. Because with us today, the man, the myth, the legend, friend to you and me, and perhaps the greatest beard model since the late, great Kenny Rogers himself, Mr. Ian Hazzikostas, game director, World of Warcraft. Welcome.
What an introduction. Hey, guys. Pleasure to be here.
Happy to have you. The credit to Jez for the heavy lift here, and our friends there at Blizzard. It's a real pleasure to have you on and get a piece of your time. I know you're very busy, especially these days. We got a lot going on with midnight coming up around the corner and a bunch of other things. So we don't
one or two things. Yeah, one or two plates spinning.
Maybe just a couple. But this might be a little bit different for you. I know. You know, these are kind of the famous Shotgun Ian 30-minute interview specials, and a lot of times I think these have been with streamers. I don't know the last time you've been on a proper podcast. I know we got this like video contingent going on here, but this is still very much a podcast. So apologies in advance that this might be a little bit different, but I promise this should be a good time. So
I'm all about it. I'm here to have a fun conversation. Let's talk about anything and everything.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because typically when I have a guest on, and Jez knows this because at one time he was subject to one of these, I like to talk about the person that we're having on. And quite frankly, I think you're a very interesting dude. People kind of forget that you're a human. I know I see your face on like the cover of, other content creator videos. It's like, oh, look what he did this time. Oh my God, that kind of stuff. And I think people kind of forget there's an actual person back there. And so if I may quickly, and I'd have a million questions about this if we had, I don't know, 3 times as much time. But I want to run through this quickly, and forgive me if any errors here. But from the East Coast originally, New York Yankee fan.
Yep.
Listen, I'm repping the anti-Dodger Giants love right here. So I don't know how you feel about those Blue Jays, but
in my defense, also, like, I grew up in the 80s. The Yankees were actually actively terrible for all of the 80s. So I wasn't like just hopping on the bandwagon of, the multi-championship winning team. But yeah, I grew up in the Bronx. So
there it is. Fair enough. Mother, elementary school teacher, introduced you to educational video games and other type games at an early age. Father reading you Greek myths of legend, kind of getting you can see where all of this is kind of getting mixed up.
I might know what talk you've watched.
It was a good one. There's a couple, actually, if people haven't kind of gone out there and searched the bowels of the internet. There are some good talks that our man here has given. Mind for Puzzles, high school math team captain. My goodness. Look at these bona fides. But bigger than most, in my mind, Harvard graduate.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Undergraduate. What'd you study? What'd you get your degree in?
It was the major was called social studies. It was like a mix of different humanities. It was like government, philosophy, economics. I knew I wanted to go to law school next at the time, so I was trying to do like a pre-law kind of thing there.
That makes sense. I was poli-sci, and I thought I wanted to do the same thing, and then I saw what it entailed, and it scared the hell out of me, so I backed away. But good for you, because NYU School of Law was your eventual future. Got your degree there. As an aside, John Grisham is your inspiration. Well, I don't know too many attorneys that have said that before.
I mean, look, I was a book I read at the age of like 12, and I was like, mafia stuff aside, this dude's life sounds pretty cool. I want to learn more about it. And I don't know, my parents were happy when I said I want to be a lawyer at the age of 12, so I just kind of chased it.
So I'm glad that you brought up your parents, because eventually I got a question about this. So you end up in DC, you're a clerk for a bit, and then you end up in a firm and you're practicing. You're attorney by day, legal by day, raid leader at night for one of the most famous, infamous groups of all time. Perhaps if you've been around long enough, elitist jerks, whose website those of us of a certain age have all been on. But through personal connections of yours, you wind up making the jump to Blizzard eventually. And so the question that I have for you, and this is something that I think a lot of people might benefit from hearing, how do you have the confidence to make that kind of jump? Because your parents must have thought you were crazy, going from the gravy train on biscuit wheels to now you're going to go develop video games on the West Coast. And how does somebody have the confidence to make that jump?
Yeah, my parents thought I was out of my damn mind. Because I mean, as far like they didn't even know what World of Warcraft was at the time. Like their initial reaction was like, "This sounds like a scam. Why would anyone pay you to do this? What do you know about any of this?" And then separately from that, like, you've spent 7 years in school chasing this. Why are you walking away from it? I think what made me take the plunge. So it was an incredibly unique opportunity. Again, a couple folks in my guild had come to work for Blizzard. I had been sending feedback emails in for a couple of years, starting in Encourage to people like Jeff Kaplan, then game director on World of Warcraft. And so, I was kind of on their radar in that sense. In 2008, I was actually like applying for other legal jobs at the time. I was looking to switch firms. I wasn't super happy with the work I was getting where I was. And I was just complaining to my friends online about, job applications suck, sending out resumes, waiting to hear back, getting ghosted, all of that. And one of my friends, who was here mentioned, "Hey, have you ever thought about sending a resume out to Blizzard?" So I almost did, like, on a lark. I was like, what's the harm? Why not? And then, of course, it's like, when I got an interview, it was an amazing opportunity to sit down with people I'd idolized and just talk World of Warcraft with them for a day. But I didn't even seriously think that I was going to make a whole life career change at that time. I was just fascinated and kind of awestruck just as a fan to have that experience. Sure. And then when I ultimately got an offer, what it came down to for me was like where I was in my life. So in my late 20s, was single, was looking for a change. And the idea of like it felt a little bit stuck in a rut. And so the idea of like, you know what, I'm going to move 2,000 miles from where I've ever lived. I'm going to do something totally and completely different. What an adventure that would be. And I was very fortunate to have a legal degree to fall back on. You know, I did speak to the legal recruiters I was working with, and I asked them, like, if I took a year away from the law, how crazy would that be? How damaging would that be long term?
Good question.
And their answer was, you know, if you have a good explanation for that year off, it's no big deal. So what I told myself was, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to do something kind of crazy. I'm going to uproot my life. Because if I don't, I'll always wonder, what would it have been like? I knew that there would come a time, like, this was a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
If I let it pass me by, I'd come home someday, maybe the next year, maybe 5 years down the road, having had a crappy day at work, feeling a bit down, and think to myself, like, man, I wish I'd seen what that was all about. And so I wanted to know, and I didn't want to have a life that, you know, had regret hanging over it. And so I moved out here, and by 2 weeks in, I was like, okay, no, I'm in. This is it. Like, I love this. I can't get enough of it. And I've never looked back, and it's been 17 years.
Regret is a hell of a motivator sometimes, but that is an excellent way, I think, to look at things, is that adventure, right? Embrace the adventure, right? If there's anything I've learned from Lord of the Rings, embrace the adventure. So good for you. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you something you probably already know, but I have tremendous confidence in you, and that this game is in the right hands with you at the helm. And I know you get grief, and you're very good about handling it. If I were you, I'd be on a therapist couch every week. These nerds are getting at me. So I don't know how you do it. But let me tell you, this is how I know this. For anybody that's watching, anybody that's listening, this is how I know these things. I want to take you back to the heady days of BlizzCon 2016, where I held Ian hostage over by some food trucks. And again, many years later, inside the Marriott, there we are. This gracious man, even though, look, you can see he's trying to get away from me, and I don't blame him at all. I would be too. But here was a man.
You look very happy in that picture.
Look how happy I am. I am thrilled. It's the happiest I've ever been in my life. So here we are, especially in 2016, and you're busy. It's BlizzCon. Things are going wild, and you are out there. You're having every conversation with people. You still are that way, as far as I know, to this day. You're very gracious with your times, being here as an example. But there was something that you said to me back then that really struck me, was that, just as an offhanded comment, that was the first day that you hadn't completed your emissary quests. And it was one of those things where I was standing there with my buddy Russ, and we were like, he really does play the game. He really is in it. This isn't just some like cover. This isn't just something, well, I used to do a thing, now I don't do a thing. Like, you really are a man of the people. Like, you are truly one of us. I think there's a great handful of people that I've come across there at Blizzard that you really are one of us, and I think you deserve the credit to continue that passion from kind of both lenses, as a player and as a game director, where you've got so much going on there. You know, and you have even said yourself recently about sort of the evolution of your own kind of thinking about the game, you know, transitioning over time. But I guess the question that I would have for you is kind of reversing that lens. What's the biggest evolution that you've seen in the WoW community, in the Warcraft community, since you've come on board as an employee?
First of all, thank you for all the very kind words. I mean, I love what I do, and I wake up every day knowing I'm incredibly lucky to be able to do this. And, you know, when we have BlizzCons, it's always simultaneously the most exhausting and energizing few days of any given year. Oh, yeah. Right? It's like I need to sleep for a week when it's over. But what a delight to be able to connect with the people whose work, you know, who has touched them directly, and to see that and to hear their thoughts and to hear their stories about the game. Everyone always comes back like super energized, ready to go. Mm-hmm. But about the community at large, I mean, it's a great question. Just trying to think through. I don't know that this change is unique to the World of Warcraft community, but I think, you know, as a game that's been going for 20 years now, World of Warcraft and its community have really grown up with the internet. And the way that online communities and the spread of information and discussions have evolved, I think, have inevitably shaped how we approach the game and how we approach speaking to our community. You get what you guys do is awesome, so I don't want to paint a very broad brush here, but I think like the importance and the rise of influencers and content creators in World of Warcraft, but really all gaming spaces, I think is something that we've really had to think about how it affects the way our community thinks about the game. Using BlizzCon as an example, and I've been to every BlizzCon except the very first, and been to all of them since 2008 as a developer. Talking to tons of folks, as I would always do, I would always want to get feedback, ask people like, hey, if there's something we could change about the game to make it better for you, what would that be? Prior to around 2016 or so, 2017, you'd get incredibly diverse answers from people. You'd get answers that reflected their personal experience, the things that they and their guildmates complained about or talked about on Vent or whatever at the time that they wanted to, share a piece of their mind with me about. More recently, and this is just how information works, it's much more common to have someone be like, okay, I love the game for the most part, but like there's a few things you need to change. And as they list the first couple, I'm like, I know exactly which video you watched. I know who made that video. And I know what the next 3 things you're going to say are. That doesn't make that feedback less valid, but it's definitely much less organic, much more homogenous than it used to be. And that's, I think like to use an example of how this has informed some of our actual design thinking. It's like looking at the changes we made to Mythic Plus going into War Within. We basically completely overhauled and effectively removed affixes at the very high end. And it was interesting looking at the discourse around Mythic Plus in late Dragonflight over that summer leading into War Within, where at the very high end, everyone was incredibly anti-affix. All the content creators, everyone talking about, who did Mythic Plus seriously, hated affixes. And that became the kind of the broad community view of like, these are the problem with Mythic Plus, even, espoused by people who weren't pushing high keys at all, who were just trying to get keys done for their vault. And I think part of realizing that was understanding like, these groups of players are almost playing different games effectively. Like, yes, if you are trying to push the leaderboards, then back in the old system, a week where the affixes had a potentially slightly lower ceiling on what was possible, those were dead weeks. It wasn't even worth running keys if you knew that you weren't going to be able to get a new best on a bolstering week or whatever else. But that wasn't affecting players in the Mythic 8 range, and yet they were telling us that they hated affixes and they needed to go. We bifurcated the system where there is a rotating pool of Kiss Curse affixes still that do have randomness to them, do have variation in what's possible from week to week, up to 12. Completely got rid of them above that. That talking point, that community complaint just vanishes completely because it was ultimately being driven and fueled by the very legitimate complaints, to be clear, of a vocal minority of the player base who also happen to be the ones who are writing the guides, making the videos, streaming all the time, talking about what they like and don't like about the system. And so like meeting players where they are and understanding what's going to make them happy, what's going to satisfy different audiences, I think we view through a slightly different lens than we used to as we process the feedback that we're getting, because it is often informed by others' perspectives and not just your own experience as a player.
Excellent answer. Appreciate that. Jez actually has a couple questions that are going to tie into this in just a minute, but just to get a couple more questions shotgunned out here. Any updates on a midnight beta launch? I know people have been asking about that.
You will have a date for that by the time this airs formally, I believe.
Monday.
I think we might be announcing it like literally today or tomorrow as this is being recorded. So it's going to be early November. Exact date to follow. It's a couple weeks away.
Okay. Sounds good. Last question for me before I turn it over to Jez. Thinking about the World Soul Saga arc as a whole. We've been told, the design of this is intended in large part to tie up all these loose ends that we've got going on in World of Warcraft. How much of that is guiding your, decision making when putting all of this together? And maybe more to a finer point, Are there still little seeds that are being planted for the future, or is this intended to be like kind of all encompassing, and then we're starting completely fresh?
So I think, yeah, absolutely. We're tackling this magnum opus of a trilogy. I think it's been very exciting for the team to be able to plant seeds and have threads that we know are going to pay off down the line. We've always had loose planning, but we've never known with as much specificity what story we're going to be telling in 2 years or 3 years in ways that allow us to like really foreshadow in a deep way, rather than just kind of like, hey, we came up with a cool idea, we could sort of tie this back to a thing we did and make it make sense. But at the same time, we're also mindful that we need each beat of the World Soul Saga, each expansion, to still feel approachable and to stand on its own as a self-contained, satisfying story. You shouldn't feel like if you missed the War Within, there's no point playing Midnight, and ditto for the Last Titan around the corner. But at the same time, yeah, the World Soul Saga is not the end of World of Warcraft. We're not trying to wrap up and conclude everything.
Thank you.
And we'd be irresponsible if we have a lot more stories to tell, lot more exciting things to come. And we are also mindful of lessons learned from other IPs like maybe Marvel Cinematic Universe, and trying to rebuild momentum after like everything came to a climax in Infinity War Endgame. So yeah, we need to be planting those seeds and beginning those threads that we're going to keep pulling on, so that there are a lot of unanswered questions at the end of the World Soul Saga. We do need to pay off and resolve the big ones that have been hanging over us, but along the way, it shouldn't be a surprise what the next expansion after Last Titan is going to be, or the thing after that. There should be a natural continuation that keeps the story moving forward, as opposed to just this like drastic endpoint and then lack of clarity as to what's going to follow.
I appreciate hearing that, Ian, because I don't have a life. I don't have anything else to do. So without World of Warcraft, then my wife has to put up with me, and she's a great woman, doesn't deserve that. So, all right, I'm gonna turn this over to Jez, because speaking of Midnight, I think he's got some questions here that the community is very hot about, or high on at the moment. So, Mr. Corden, take it away.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you again from myself too for fielding our questions. And
of course,
I feel like maybe potentially, it's you mentioned like influencers and how like sort of discourse can be homogenized now. Like, I've definitely felt that as I've come sort of like, I'm not like a huge influencer or whatever, but like as I've watched my platform grow and I've sort of liaised with other people who've got a platform, you do sort of start to identify where like everyone's kind of making the same videos about the same topics. And I suppose maybe I owe you a little bit of an apology, because I posted a report last week about what the next Xbox is going to look like. I suppose you might have seen it. And in that article, and I had no intentions of this happening, but I used World of Warcraft as an example of what that potentially might look like. And then extrapolating from that, and obviously I'm not going to ask you to speak to what, Microsoft's plans are, if indeed you even knew them, but the community now has sort of conspiracy theory has coalesced around what this plan might look like, and it's sort of tied into some of the design changes that are going into Midnight, specifically add-ons, the pruning of skills, the sort of merging of skills, and the removal of interrupts, and trying to reduce cognitive load and things like that. And people have started to assume that this is with the goal of bringing the game to consoles, or improving, trying to make it more accessible to broaden scrub, dumb it down kind of thing. I wondered if you could speak to some of those, some of that discourse about the design philosophy of Midnight, and if indeed this is all designed by some nefarious means to bring the game to gamepads and stuff like that.
It is not. I mean, I think just, to be fully transparent, there's no reason for us to hide anything about this. If we were actively working towards bringing World of Warcraft to consoles or a bunch of other platforms, we'd be saying, like, we're actively working towards it. We know we have a lot of work to do, but it's a place where we want to land. Our focus remains right now on the PC-based experience. And I think a lot of these changes as a package are about approachability broadly. World of Warcraft is an incredibly complex game. And as much as, I know there's members of the community who celebrate that complexity, But I think there's a big difference between having a very high skill ceiling in a game, having a tremendous amount of depth, and just having, complexity. I think our goal has always been, Blizzard's goals have always been with all of our games, to have them be easy to learn and nearly impossible to master. And I think a lot of our changes in World of Warcraft in Midnight are aimed at improving the easy to learn side of that spectrum. I think the skill ceiling in this game is still going to be incredibly, incredibly high. You're going to see the people who have been, pro level PvPers, people running MDI, people, topping the leaderboards in Mythic Plus, people pushing the race to World First. The same people are going to be the ones who are coming out on top in this world, and there will be countless challenges for them to, tackle as they try to approach perfection. Really, we've been talking about this for about a year now philosophically. This is us stepping back and kind of taking stock of the state of the game, what's required to play it well, what's required to even play it at what is now kind of a baseline level for the community at endgame. What, a normal or heroic raiding guild is expecting you to know or to have installed or to do, what an average Mythic Plus pug is expecting of you, and making sure that those expectations are reasonable. And so, the changes that we're making, unlike on the class side, for example, unlike the last round of pruning that we did like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, where we actually just focused very heavily on button count in terms of number of abilities in your spellbook, and we mostly pruned utility abilities that maybe didn't feel as commonly used by the average player. The feedback we got around that was doing a lot to harm class and spec identity. That was actually in some ways lowering the skill ceiling because we were taking niche abilities away that let players feel cool or smart and differentiate themselves because they were using them properly. But what we weren't doing back then was slightly simplifying the core combat rotation that 100% of players need to do. And again, that's more the approach we're taking here today of how many abilities do we have that are redundant, that are commonly macroed together, that really are just, there's no deep gameplay to them. It's just like, it's the right answer to push this every 15 or 20 seconds on cooldown when it's up, no matter what. And maybe you build a weak or something to remind you to make sure you're always doing that. Is that really adding interesting gameplay? Is that adding depth? Or is it just adding complexity? And that's what we've tried to target. Now, I'm not going to say that we are finished or that we've done a perfect job there, but that's been the starting point of this overall approach. And the team is continuing to iterate over the course of alpha and beta to follow.
I understand. I mean, it's I did jump into Midnight, and played around my Warlock a little bit. I've been playing Demonology for almost 20 years. I'm not someone who makes alts and or even tries other specs really. I mean, I can play Affliction, Destruction, but it's like I like my Felguard. I had him since Burning Crusade. He's my bro. So I did kind of feel like when I was setting on my action bars for Midnight, it was like, oh, there's only 2 rows of abilities now. Pretty much. Things like Health Funnel merged with Drained Life and things like that, which to some degree I kind of get, But is there like you say you're going to iterate and things like that? Is there a point where you're looking at where we might have made this too easy? Because one of the things that I've always sort of struggled with trying to get friends and family into this game is especially the lower levels and stuff. They're like, this game is so easy to the point of being disengaging. Yeah. So actually finding that point, that sweet spot where people actually feel challenged and engaged, that can actually be an issue too. So I wonder if is there a point where you might go, oh, actually we've maybe removed too much of the engaging feel from a class or a spec or healing and stuff like that? Because I openly admit, I think playing Disc, as a dumb Warlock, playing Discipline Priest, I think almost gave me an aneurysm. I was like, how do people do this? I've got new respect for healers after that.
Yeah, so I think that it's certainly possible that there are places where we have gone too far, as I acknowledged, right? I think this is probably the simplest that we're going to get, right? I think we did whatever pruning and streamlining we were going to do pretty upfront. If we're hearing from players that in some cases we've gone too far, or it feels like there are gaps in their rotation or beloved abilities that are missing, those are things that the team is very open to returning. That said, I think we also it's not a bad place for us to have a range of complexity when it comes to different specs. We have, with the number of specs we have in the game at this point, particularly on pure DPS classes where you have 3 options, it's okay if there's one that feels a little bit simpler, a little bit more accessible. Beast Mastery Hunter has been kind of the marquee example of this for years, right? If someone is looking for a relatively straightforward spec to play over many expansions, that's one of the top recommendations. It's also no surprise that is one of the most popular specs out there, even when they're not at the top of Sims or the meters, because of that. And there is a very healthy appetite among a broad base of players for simpler specs. So do we want everything to be that? No. We also want there to be the more challenging ones that, particularly if you're speccing into certain talents where you can opt into extra layered complexity. We're trying to really cast a very broad net here to offer something for every type of playstyle. But we also understand that, as you said, if you've played Warlock, you've played Demo for years and years and years and years, we don't want to too significantly change that out from under people in ways that contradict their expectations or the things that they've come to fall in love with about the specs. That said, with every new expansion, we're adding new things. We're adding Apex talents. We're going to have new set bonuses, new things to layer on top of all of this. And so we do need to be mindful. That's why we use the pruning analogy. We can't just have unfettered, unshackled growth open-endedly, or things are just going to collapse under their own weight. We do need to think about what pieces we can remove or streamline a bit as we continue to add to allow healthy growth.
All right. That is fantastic. As a lifelong Fury warrior, I just like hitting things hard and mindlessly. So thank you for letting me continue to do that. That's the most important aspect of all. I know we've got a hard stop here at 10 o'clock. So appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. It is really an honor to get some time with you. So thanks again for stopping by, and hope we can hook it up again sometime.
It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, I'd love to talk more. I think we could keep going for probably hours here.
You know it. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah. More time to convince you to add playable ogres, right?
Exactly.
There it is. Thank you.
There it is.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
So there you have it. Like I said, super down to earth, was open to our questions. Even if they did go a little off the beaten path, I was curious how he was going to respond to sort of my style of wanting to have a little more of a personal discussion. I knew, later on we'd get to some more of the hot button items with Jez, and covered that, I think, beautifully. But an incredible experience. It almost feels like when Rocky got to fight Apollo Creed. I'm no streamer at all. I'm no big personality amongst our content creator community. I'm sure that this is probably going to piss a few people off that I was able to sit down for this interview because maybe they feel they're more deserving. I think we all have felt that little tinge of, oh man, I wish that was me. And I completely understand that. And I just hope that I made the best of the situation and the best of the opportunity here. And rest assured, now that this has happened, I have expectations of the VIP club and the Crystal table, and hopefully what we'll continue to be invited to or be able to participate, especially with BlizzCon as well. Next year, we're looking at about 10 months away or so. So hoping maybe that turn into something, but that's further down the road. And for now, that was an incredible opportunity. I can't thank Blizzard and Ian enough for being so gracious and letting this happen. And if this is the only time, then this is the only time. And hey, at least I got my shot at it, and I had fun. Hope they had fun, and hope you did too. So I think for now, this will take care of our special episode, and my thanks to all of you for listening. And remember, you can always follow me and this show on Twitter at Berserker Rage and Unshackled_Fury, on Blue Sky at Berserker and Unshackled Fury, as well as on YouTube at Unshackled Fury. You can find all things Jez at JezCorden.com. And you can also join our Discord, links for which are in the profile of the show on Twitter and on our website, unshackledfury.com. Feel free to contact the show with your questions, comments, or otherwise through any of those resources or email us at unshackledfuryshow@gmail.com. And you can find this show wherever you get your podcasts. So once again, thank you for listening. Remember to keep your swords wet and your banners high. And we'll see you next time. Farewell.